give me a formula, or I so desperately need a father and a mother that I'm willing to attach to the first person that represents that.
And I think it's so important for anybody, but especially as believers, for us to learn how to process through our pain, because if we don't, then these negative and painful experiences that are justified, there are so many justified experiences where people have gone through a ton of pain, a ton of hurt and betrayal and abuse. It can feel so tempting to have a justifiable reason to be angry and to desire punishment and to be partnered with accusation. But where that goes so wrong is if we aren't aware of our wounds and the lenses that are being created, the belief systems that are being created, we start projecting those onto God subconsciously. And your experiences with broken people, maybe that you have in the past had so much reverence and respect for that maybe they were on a pedestal in your heart. Broken people now are changing the way that you see the church as a whole.
Yes.
Changing the lens in which you view God as a loving father, or maybe you're unable to view him as a loving father because this man who so represented Jesus to you failed and hurt you and brought an abuse in your life. If we don't know how to heal this pain and to healthily grieve, then it will impact the way we do relationship with God and with people.
This has the capacity to shipwreck a lot of people's faith. And I've seen smaller things in people's lives cause them to deconstruct their faith altogether. And I actually had a guy that was a Bethel alumni reach out to me over the last week who saw my video on YouTube and was telling me like, hey, I want to get together with you. But what was interesting is this guy shared his story with me. He's like, I was a part of Bethel worship, all this different stuff. And he's like, I became atheist coming out of Bethel. And then I found Jesus. And I was like, wow. And so his whole heart is to help people sift through these types of things too. But why is it that something like this has that much permission in our lives to affect our rudimentary faith in Christ? Why is it? And I think the more we can have conversations about this and bring more information to the pool of meaning, it allows us to unpack, why is this such a faith shipwrecking moment for me? Why does this feel so destructive versus being able to feel, experience, move through the grief and loss and still have a deep faith in Christ and know, okay, I've learned something new. I've gathered new lessons from this. It was painful, but there's redemption inside of it, and my faith in Christ is stronger. And I think that's my heart for anybody listening to or watching this, because I think this type of thing has that capacity too, to be a strengthening.
And I personally feel like I have had the privilege of experiencing my own church hurt, and you have too. So we aren't speaking from a place of, you shouldn't be in pain. So many of you are probably thinking, well, what do you know? Like, what pain have you gone through whenever it comes to the church? But we have experienced a lot of our own church hurt and pain around the charismatic movement in different capacities with your history, and my own personal pain of feeling really betrayed and shamed by church leadership and just not loved well with someone I really, really trusted and had a lot of respect for. So we've been able to move through long seasons, you guys, of pain and church hurt and get to a place where the church and leadership can feel like a gift again. I'm not saying we have finished that process, but we are in a really peaceful place where all of this information coming to light for me didn't trigger anything. I felt grieved. I felt grieved for the victims. I felt relieved that it came to light, because we've actually known about a lot of stuff within leadership with Shawn Bolz for years and years. We've heard things come out and haven't felt like it was our responsibility to shed light on anything. Not having the full story, not having all the information, just hearing of a few people's experience. I feel really grieved for how this impacts the church as a whole. I feel really grieved for how this impacts people's faith towards the gifts for today, the gifts of the Spirit. And I feel mostly grieved for the victims and people who were silenced and shut down for so many years. But I am really glad that this is coming to light, and I am thankful that we have the ability to move through this. But we've gotten to walk out holding that tension of, how do we grieve the way the church has let us down and mourn the pain we caused ourselves by putting it on a pedestal. That was my decision to put that leader on a pedestal. That was my decision to put them in a place where they never should have been. The whole Bible is story after story of man failing over and over and over again, and Jesus coming through and being a redeemer. And so why are we surprised in moments like this whenever we have stories come out of man's brokenness? Grace isn't the absence of consequences, it's the presence of redemption that's inside of them. And that's what we really want to unpack here is how do we live in that tension so that moments like this aren't devastating and don't shatter our faith.
Let's get personal about this because I know that I had some impact. I know it's nothing to the degree that like people truly abused by that leader were affected. But for me, the Shawn Bolz situation affected me in some different ways because I received 2 prophetic words from him years and years ago before I was even at Bethel Church, the school of ministry. And we did invite him into our group, but I thought that he was somebody that could really teach people how to hear God. Now in retrospect, I'm like, how violating and how much of a betrayal that was, seeing his book get platformed. And when I read the book too, I never felt like, man, this is so rich. You know, when you can read something, it's like soaking in God's presence. This didn't feel like that. And now it puts language to it, but there's such a spiritual gaslighting in this because you're like, you led me to believe with full conviction that you are 100% just hearing God. But now I have to question everything. And it also makes me question other people because now I'm like, well, if you were doing this, what other people were lying? And can I trust the word that was given to me? And for me, the good thing in this is that I, for a while now, have moved out of worshiping leaders. There were certain leaders with such powerful gifting and conviction that in the moment you would never admit it, but years later you could go, I was worshiping that individual based on who they were, who they represented in my life, my desperate need for truth, and seeing this person represented like, wow, it's the closest person to Christ I've ever seen. And so we give them more platform than just honor and respect.
And can I add in, when you have people that have wounds with mothers and fathers, now you have lifelong deficits. And if you aren't aware of your wounds, it is really easy and tempting to put another leader that represents that mother or father figure because you are so hungry for the approval, the nurture, the love, the significance, whatever it is, of this father or mother type figure. And it's a subconscious thing that happens, but it makes it easier to put a leader on a pedestal when you have those internal deficits from childhood.
Every single one of us was wired for a perfect parent, which is why it's so powerful that Jesus came representing a perfect father. But until that representation, we've been messed up over the year. The original fall in the garden was that man totally misunderstood God's nature and how good he was and decided, I have lack, I'm not enough. And so I'm going to accomplish something on my own to make myself enough. And God is like, whoa, okay, now this plan, it goes into effect to demonstrate to the world my heart for humanity and my nature and my goodness. And all of the Old Testament, we see God submitting to man's inability and their lack of capacity to fully understand God. But he's trying to meet them with the brokenness and fragmentation of their own understanding. We see judges, we see kings, we see prophets. And even with Moses, the Israelites felt more comfortable with him doing face-to-face relationship with God. But just, we want rules. Give us a formula. Give me a formula. Or I so desperately need a father and a mother that I'm willing to attach to the first person that represents that.